Alright, what's up YouTube? I'm back. And I give you guys back-to-back YouTube videos. Now this one is going to be on to two channels. And this one anyone can watch. Men, women, doesn't matter. Anyone can watch this YouTube video. Now this one is also original content. This one's going to be called Sex Game, Television and Film, and Negative Reaction. So we'll try to find a better name for the title, but this is going to be in the realm of television and film, part 1, and it's for women and for men. Now, you probably might be asking yourself, Alexander, why would you call a title Sex Game, Television and Film, hyphen Negative Reaction? Okay, now this one is a video that I wanted to make for a very long time. And both my producers told me to hold off on the video for about 6 to 9 months and try to wait until the end of the year to make this into a video. And it's the right time to make this into a video. And I'm giving you part 1 because I have to go into the history of film and then television. And then part 2 will be the same thing, but it'll be called Sex Game, YouTube Content Creator / Negative Reaction. So you're going to get a part 1 and you're going to get a part 2. And these are brand new episodes. These are not talking about sex and dating situations. This is talking about good perception versus bad perception from movies and television and how it translates into real life. As a man or as a woman, young or old or black or white. How does stereotypes affect people in real life? 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So let's go ahead and get started in the video subject. Now, basically, let's start with movies, because that's the best way to explain the situation. Now, I'm going to use at least 5, maybe 6 names of films that you've heard of or probably seen, or you had friends in high school and college or at work or at the gym that have told you about these movies, but you've never really had the chance to sit down because you're always at work or at school, taking care of business, paying bills, washing clothes, and you might have 2 jobs or you might have your own business and you've never had a chance to watch these movies. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the first one. I'm going to start with Batman. We all know that Batman's a big-time comic book superhero. They've made Batman into movies and television shows, and it's based off of a DC comic book. Now, Batman was created by a comic book writer by the name of Bob Kane. Now, that was a guy that was like 50 years ago, and he created Batman. He made Bruce Wayne into a high-class, playboy, billionaire, rich guy who was that in the daytime, and then at nighttime he was a crime-fighting vigilante superhero that would fight criminals, and then along the way he created those characters that you see in all the movies and television shows. You know, the Riddler, Two-Face, Penguin, the Joker, Scarecrow, Dr. Manhattan. You know, he created those types of characters. Characters like Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn and Bane, they came much later by other comic book writers, but he created the Joker, the Riddler, the Penguin, Two-Face, the Man-Bat. He created the original characters that Batman would fight in the comic books for almost 70 plus years of comic book history. And then you would see it in movies and television. Now, what comes to your mind, men and women, when you hear the name Batman? At first, when he first called it that, his boss kind of laughed at him and said, "Why would you call it Batman?" And as the story goes, because I wasn't born yet, that he said that the name sells the book. Order for someone to buy a book called Batman, people have to buy it. So when they see the name Batman, why is a man dressed up as a bat? And why is he using the bat as a symbol to fight crime? And you have to read the comic book just to find that out. When they started making movies and television shows, it was the same thing. You watch Michael Keaton's Batman, right? It was dark, it was mysterious, and they asked the film director, Tim Burton, why are you making it so dark? Like, why are you making it so dark and scary? And he says, order for people to watch this movie, in order for this to make $250,000 or $1 billion at the box office for movie distribution rights, the name has to sell the people, the audience. And for almost 13 years, they would never touch Batman into a movie. And all of a sudden, 1989, you get your first ever feature film called Batman. Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne Batman. Michael Keaton is the hero, and Jack Nicholson, the legendary great Jack Nicholson, is the Joker. And it took almost 13 years for them to turn that into a Hollywood feature-length film. The last time you saw a movie like that was called Superman with Christopher Reeves and Gene Hackman in it. And a lot of people have to ask themselves, when you watch movies and you watch television shows, what make you watch a movie or a television show in the first place? This is something that I learned in film school. 99.999% the name. When I was in junior high, high school, college, even today, and I always get this conversation from my dad, he'll never let me forget it. He'll give me a total of 10 to 15 conversations. Last names are important. Doesn't matter what your first name is. Doesn't matter what your middle name is. Last names are 100% statistically in this society. They're important. They go on your paycheck. They go on your credit card. They go on your checking account. They go on your savings account. They go on to your magazines when you order off the internet. When you go to the store and you get your a receipt back, it would show the person who had the credit card, and sometimes it'll see your name. You go to the bank and you want to get a loan, they have to make you sign off. When you get a check, they always make you sign twice. Every time you get a legal document, you have to sign twice. Your name is very important. Like, there was a catchphrase in the movie Troy with Brad Pitt in it, and he was asleep, and they sent a 12-year-old to wake him up for battle in the beginning of the movie Troy. And he says a line in the movie, and I'll never forget it. He says, that's why nobody will remember your name. What he means is, if you never ever face your fears, and you never face your fears like a man, nobody will ever remember you. History has it that people who are in history, like when you think of historic figures, you think of Alexander the Great, you think of Hercules, you think of Zeus, you think of Robin Hood. Well, the reason why people can remember the name Hercules is because, one, he was a real person. Two, he was a mythical hero, you know, the son of a god, if you believe in all of that. And his name sells everything. Movies, television shows, toys, books, graphic novels, theater plays, musicals. Hercules' name sells. You watch the movies of Hercules to understand why is he called Hercules. Why does he have one name? He don't have a last name. When you watch Robin Hood, you want to know, why do they call it Robin Hood? You know, a guy who steals from the rich and gives to the poor. And why is he called Robin Hood? You want to know, why is he called Robin Hood? The name Robin Hood makes you watch the movies and the television shows 99.99%. Hercules, you go to the movies because you want to know, why is a guy called Hercules and why he doesn't have a last name? How does he fight monsters and dragons and it becomes a hero? When you watch Batman, you want to know, why is a multi-billionaire that's a rich, famous playboy businessman dressed up as a bat, and why is he using the symbolization of a bat to fight crime? When you watch the movie called Superman, you want to know why they call him Superman. Now, he does have a real name, but you want to know, how did he got to be called Superman? How does the powers that Superman has, the superhuman strength, he could fly, you know, he has invulnerability, he has heat vision, television. You want to know, how does his powers give him the name Superman? You watch all of the movies to want to know why he's called Superman. The name Superman sells the movie. Batman, Superman, those are names that sell. Now, did you know that about 15 years ago, that when they did the Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy, Batman Begins, that almost nobody wanted to go see that movie because they were afraid that it was going to be too scary, it was going to be too violent, too over the top. I mean, it was violent, it was over the top, and it was kind of scary because of the way they wrote out the script, the way they drawn the story for him to become Batman, and his fear of bats. But The Dark Knight, so they didn't get the critical reception with Batman Begins. Just so you know, that when they did Batman Begins, I actually saw the movie when it first came out. Now, most people Most people don't ever get to see the movie when it comes out because you're at work, you're at school. And that was probably the second or third time in history when I was in college, or should I say on my way to college, that I went to a movie theater and saw Batman Begins. And this was a Friday that the movie opened up. I actually saw the movie first screen. And nobody really went to go see that movie because, one, it was too violent, too scary, and people didn't want to see a movie about a man dressed up as a bat called Batman, called Batman Begins. So what did Christopher Nolan do as a director? He said, let's get rid of the name Batman. Like, let's literally get rid of the name Batman and let's come back and call it The Dark Knight. The name started to draw interest. People who never wanted to watch Batman in the 1990s, all of a sudden you saw people who never saw Michael Keaton's Batman, who never saw Batman Returns, Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, terrible film, don't watch it, don't waste your money, don't waste your time and energy, terrible film, Batman and Robin, who never seen those films. All of a sudden, they go see The Dark Knight, which is a sequel to Batman Begins and the Christopher Nolan trilogy. All of a sudden, it makes $1 billion worldwide. It smashes all box office records, destroys all expectation. But they got sued because someone accused them of stealing some religion from a country. They got sued. Even though Dark Knight was a success, people sue them and accuse them of stealing stuff that they put in the movie for a reference. When they did The Dark Knight Rise, the third film in the trilogy, the name got you to watch the movie. You notice when they did Batman Begins, nobody watched the movie. My mom won't even watch the movie. I'm like, I don't want to watch that. But as soon as they put out 3 or 4 trailers of The Dark Knight, and they changed the name from Batman to Dark Knight, people who never read comic books started watching Batman. Get rid of the name, call it a Dark Knight. Dark Knight Rise, okay, it's not the best film in the trilogy, but it made over $500,000, and it sold. Avengers, people who would not watch the first Iron Man film. I seen Iron Man when it came out. People who did not want to watch Iron Man. They did not want to watch Iron Man 2. They watched Avengers because why? The name sold to make you want to go to the movies and watch it. People who didn't even watch the Christopher Reeve Supermans. People who only knew Brandon Routh as Superman from the movie Superman Returns went to go see Man of Steel. And the same thing with that idea. Zack Ryder said, you know what, we're not going to call it Superman. We're going to call it Man of Steel. And people wanted to know, why would you call a movie Man of Steel? Yeah, the movie might have not have been as good quality as people accused it of not being, but it sold. Batman versus Superman. As bad as everybody rips into that film, you cannot deny it, as a man or as a woman, young or old, black or white. You cannot deny that 99.99% of the reason why it made that much money was because of the names Batman versus Superman. That's when they brought the name Batman back. But they attached it to Superman so you could still watch the movie. And it worked. And what a lot of film studios start doing is, if something scares people, they change the name of the title. Even with Star Wars, when George Lucas first came out, did you realize they laughed and made fun of George Lucas about 30 years ago when he said, I'm going to call it Star Wars? They laughed. They was like, how you going to do Star Wars in outer space? Like, how you going to do that with robots and aliens? And the name worked. People went to the movies to go see Star Wars in 1977. I wasn't even born yet. My dad was born. My dad was like maybe 24, 25, around that time period, and he's seen Star Wars. Because he talks to me about it all the time. Oh, man, you should have seen the first Star Wars when it first came out. It sold out. Empire Strikes Back. They wanted to know, why would you call it Empire and then call it Empire Strikes Back? You see, the name sells the movie. Okay, yes, there's Darth Vader, there's Luke Skywalker, there's Yoda, there's Obi-Wan Kenobi, but Empire Strikes Back, the name sells. It sells itself. Then you have Return of the Jedi. Why are they calling it The Return of the Jedi? Because the name sells the movie. 99.99% movies and television shows that fail at the box office, that can't break $250 million, that can't break $250 million, those movies fail at the box office because the names do not convince men and women to go to the movies and watch those movies when they first come out opening day weekend. Saturday, Sunday is where they make the best money ever. Friday is where they actually call it the opening day weekend. But it's not until Saturday or Sunday, according to movie statistics, when it's considered opening day weekend. Friday is what starts it, but Saturday and Sunday is what picks it up. And then when you look a week or 2 weeks from now, it could go from number 1 to number 2 to number 3 to number 4 to non-existent because why? The movie failed to capture the audience's attention. When you watch a movie called The Lion King, what does the movie Lion King does? You want to know, how does a lion become the king of the pride and becomes the king, right? So the name Lion King sells itself to make the money. Aladdin, whether you like Aladdin or you hate Aladdin, the live action, the name sells. You take your girlfriend to go see Aladdin, the movie sells. Lord of the Rings. You want to know why does a hoblet takes a ring and why they call it Lord of the Rings? The name sells the movie. Twilight. Whether you like Twilight or you hate Twilight. And trust me, I've met both. I've met people who love Twilight and I know some people who hated Twilight. The name sells. Hunger Games. The name sells. Diversion. Yeah, it's a terrible ripoff of Hunger Games. No doubt about that. I agree with y'all there. But the movie got you to go see it. Diversion, Hunger Games, X-Men. The X-Men movies. Their names sell because the name draws interest. When they say a movie called Wolverine. See, if they would have called it James Logan, you wouldn't go see the movie. Trust me, you would not go see a movie if they called it James Logan. If they called it Logan, you might go see it. It's 50-50. If I called it Weapon X, you might be like, oh, why they call a movie called Weapon X? But at that time, they didn't want to do that because they was afraid that would have been too violent. So they decided to call it Wolverine because why? He's a part of the X-Men. The first Origins of Wolverine movie, it sold because it's the one character from the X-Men. The sequel, it made more money because it's the sequel. When they decided to actually use his real name called Logan, it worked. It draw you to go see the movie because the name sells the movies. Good movies get good critical reception. Bad movies get bad critical reception. Now let's talk about Scarface. I'm sure a lot of you men and women probably weren't even born in the 1970s and 80s. Don't feel bad. I wasn't born until 1986. January 1986 to be more exact. Guess what? Scarface was deemed as the most terrible, most horrendous, most violent movie in all of movie cinematic history. They destroyed, bashed, and ridiculed that movie to no end. I mean, pigs could fly in outer space. I mean, they say cows come home, but I say pigs fly into outer space. That's a joke. Don't take it literally. My point is, they bashed that movie Scarface. And then you fast forward 30 years later, and everybody who bashed that movie, all of a sudden they want to see the story of Tony Montana, the guy who brings out the character and gives you those catchphrases. I'm not going to say the catchphrases here on YouTube because they're inappropriate, and I don't want YouTube to come into the analytics and go, hey, that's inappropriate, kid. You can't be saying that on camera. You can't be saying that live in front of an audience. Got to be respectful. But my point is, they bashed that movie, and then 30 years later, all of a sudden they want to go see Scarface. All of a sudden there's comic books, graphic novels, video games, a director's cut. They made like 4 different versions of Scarface. Fast forward 30 years later, everybody loves Scarface. But back then, they hated that film. They gave Oliver Stone so much grief. The guy couldn't even come outside his apartment at the time of him becoming a director. People said The Godfather, the very first Godfather. Yes, there's Godfather 2, there's Godfather 3, but the first Godfather film, box office gold, It's 30 years later. It's still a timeless, it's still a classic. Nothing compares to that Godfather film. Never have, never will. You could make a remake. You can make 5 remakes of Godfather. Still won't come close. But everybody bashed and ridiculed Scarface. But even though people hated it 30 years ago, you can't deny a movie called Scarface made you go see the movie. Why would they call the movie Scarface? What, the guy got a scar on his face? The name made you come see the movie. See, I'm using movies to try to explain my subject matter. Let's go into horror. People say they hate horror, right? Here's what I find funny, but I also find laughable about it. People say they hate horror movies, right? Well, here's the thing. Friday the 13th, right? You don't like Friday the 13th, but the name makes people go see the movie. Like, think about it. The idea that a guy looked like a hockey player trying to get revenge for something that's conveniently stupid, right? They were cheesy back then. I'm not going to lie. Those were some hard movies to look at. But Friday the 13th, even though you're scary, and here's what a lot of the experts say. If you don't like science fiction and you don't like horror movies, why you continue to go to the movies? And the answer to that question is entertainment. You want to be, characteristically, you want to be entertained. People say, oh man, I don't like Friday the 13th. But if you don't like Friday the 13th, why you watch it? There are people that say they hate Halloween. Well, especially the Rob Zombie ones. But you hate Halloween, but why you continue to keep watching them? Because the name sells the movie. You look at, now I've already explained it when it comes to movies. Now let's talk about when you be stereotypes, because that's what I've never talked about in the video, stereotypes. What happens when you get stereotyped? See, when you get stereotyped from movies, they're not good. You know, you go to work, you go to the gym, and you get this bad stigma on it. It's like you get a black cloud that hangs around you and it never goes away. And in order to get rid of that black cloud, you got to tell people, well, I'm a nice guy. And then they'll say, well, there's plenty of people that say they're a nice guy. And sometimes you have to like scratch your head. Now, when people stereotype you from movies and television shows, that's 2 things. 1, they're ignorant, and number 2, they don't seem to understand your background and where you come from. Like, when I was a kid and a teenager, people used to always think there was something wrong with me because I like Dragon Ball Z, I like anime, I like video games, I like comic books. I wasn't into basketball and football. You might be surprised or shocked. You might spit out your Coca-Cola, your Pepsi, your 7-Up, your Sprite. You might spit it out because of what I just said. When I was a kid, I wasn't into basketball and football. My dad would try to send me to basketball practice, and I would leave like 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon and come back to the house, and he'd be like, I just paid $250 for you to go play basketball. Why are you back so early? Oh, I don't like to play basketball. What? You don't like to play what? It's a true story. You see my dad, you ask him about it, he'll tell you. I would want to go to martial arts. I would watch hockey. My dad was like, I don't understand why you want to watch hockey. I was into hockey. I would watch basketball and football on TV, but I didn't want to play the sport. I ain't eventually played basketball, eventually. Football, I ain't never played. Watch it, but I ain't never played it. Hockey, I'll watch hockey. And people be looking at me like, man, something wrong with you. You like what? You like hockey? Yeah, I like hockey. I started watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I started watching Power Rangers. And I started getting punked and bullied just because I like Power Rangers, just because I like Ninja Turtles, just because I like Dragon Ball Z. I would get punked. Got into a lot of fights. Had to start taking martial art classes because the guy was always bigger than me. And, you know, I was always getting beat up. So I started watching the Power Rangers and Ninja Turtles, and I started to learn martial arts. So I started taking martial art classes. That's a form of a stereotype. Just because somebody likes anime, comic books, and video games, that doesn't make them weird and strange. That makes them human. It makes them different and unique, but it doesn't make them weird and strange. You got some people, when they watch TV, right? Hercules. I used to watch the television show of Hercules with Kevin Sorbo. It's like 20 years ago. They make so many different interpretations of Hercules, it's not even funny. My point is, when they made Hercules, I used to always pretend that I was Hercules because he was big, he was strong, and he had charisma, and he could captivate anyone's imagination. And people was looking at me like, why you like Hercules? And I would say because he's one of my favorite mythical heroes. Same thing when it was dress up for Halloween. I would either pretend I was Batman or Superman. And people would be like, why are you pretending to be Batman or Superman? And I'd be like, because those are my favorite superheroes when I grow up. And when I was a huge Dragon Ball Z fan, still am. Did you know there's still some people that look at me when they see me wear t-shirts of Goku and Vegeta, and they be like, you still watch Dragon Ball Z and it's 14 years later? And I'd be like, you got your favorite television shows that you watch on primetime television and cable. I have my favorite television shows that I watch on primetime TV and cable. You watch any television show. When you watch Sons of Anarchy, right? One of my favorite shows. Got badass motorcycles, badass bikers, and they take on the police and the FBI. It's a good crime drama. The name sells. Sons of Anarchy. You want to know why they call it that? You got to watch the show for 7 seasons just to find out why they call it that. Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The idea that a girl can fight vampires and save the day. The name sells. Black Widow. Everybody wants to go watch Black Widow because why? The name sells. You've seen Scarlett Johansson play that character for a decade and a half, and we think she's hot and tight black leather. My point is the name of the movie sells. And when you stereotype people, it's rude, it's disrespectful, and it's wrong. So that's what these movies and television shows have to do with the subject matter. Now, in part 2 of the video, because it's going to be a 2-parter, part 2 of Sex Game, YouTube content creator / negativity, that's going to be about what happens when you do YouTube videos for a male-female audience, young or old, black or white, and how you get stereotyped for the YouTube videos that we create. Like, a lot of us go through difficulties trying to, entertain people, put smiles on people's face, and we get criticized, and then we get called names that are rude and disrespectful. Oh, he wants to be a wannabe. He's an amateur. He's a pretender. He wants to be in the conversation. That's what they would call it back when I was a kid. He's trying to be in the conversation. And what this video with part 1's about is to explain to you that the movies and the television shows, people take what they call a form of self-projection. And they try to self-project that onto people in real life, whether it's at school, at work, at the nightclub and bar, at the gym. And you know that old saying, never judge a book by its cover? Well, they judge a book by its cover because they think they can and they will. So this is only part 1 of my discussion. Part 2 is where I'm going to explain how does being a YouTube content creator fit into that category. Part 1 is to explain the television history side from a negative point of view. See, the movies are good, but there's also a downside to those movies and television shows. Like, the actors who play those characters, they get typecast. That means every time they go audition for a movie, people want them to play the same character over and over and over, and those characters become their whole life, and they don't like it because that's not who they are in real life.